Welcome to the Grow Fast podcast, where we talk with leading sales, marketing, and personal growth experts about how companies can accelerate sales, optimize marketing, and grow their businesses fast. Let's go. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Grow Fast podcast. My name is Mark Schreiner, and I will be the host of this episode of the Grow Fast podcast. Now, a couple episodes ago, I mentioned that I have a goal of reading and reviewing a couple sales or business growth or personal development books per month. And the purpose of that is that when I read them and then I review them, it kind of forces me to reflect on what I've read, and it helps me to, solidify or crystallize the content there, and sometimes hopefully apply that to whatever situation that I'm in. Today, we are going to be talking with the CEO of Dynamic Language, Rick Antezana, and we're going to be talking with Rick about Gino Wickman's book called Traction, and we're also going to be talking with the main kind of theme that runs through that book, which would be the EOS. The EOS is quite unique because it was designed by Gino Wickman to help small and medium-sized businesses. He defines that as any company from 1 to 250 people, help them get to the next level. A lot of legacy companies, they struggle. They early on they experience some growth. Then they are afraid to let go of some of the practices that got them to where they're at, and that prevents them from scaling. And the EOS is all about it's all about helping companies get to the next level. We're going to be talking to Rick about that, and just let me give you a little bit of background on Rick. He's the CEO of Dynamic Language. Dynamic Language is a leading provider of language services. So that would be interpretation and translation services, with a focus on healthcare, technology, and education. Dynamic provides a full range of these services, including transcreation, and they use a blend of technology and human translators and interpreters. So the company is perfect for this because they have about 65 employees inside and outside the US. And of course, they work with thousands of freelancers and contractors and other agencies around the world to help them scale. But, Rick's going to tell his story about how his organization, which I think was created in 1985, had a fair amount of success, reached a certain point, but was kind of stalling out, and they needed something to help them get to the next level. And the system that they decided to go in on with is the Enterprise Operating, or the EOS system. And so hold on, and we're going to get started and introduce Rick. Here we go. Hey Rick, how you been?
I've been good, Mark. Good to see you, man.
Likewise. Hey, I'm really excited to talk to you about this book, Traction, and then the Entrepreneurial Operating System, because, well, I know that you implemented it in your company, and I, since I'm running a startup, read the book, and it's like it solves all these problems kind of in advance, or problems that I've seen so many times in the past. But I really want to kind of dig into this with you. So maybe we can start at the beginning and kind of level set. Like, what is the EOS?
Yeah, happy to jump into it, and we can get into the history and all that stuff. From my perspective, though, what is EOS? It's a business operating system. Basically, it's officially, it stands for Entrepreneurial Operating System, but it's a business management system, and it's a philosophy too, for me. And it's something where if a business wants to be organized, and we're talking about across the spectrum of all business functions, if they want to be organized, and if you want to have structure and accountability, EOS is something that totally takes care of that. And I'm not going to be proselytizing and saying, oh my gosh, it's the only way to go. It's certainly, when we were taking a look at EOS, it was one of multiple options that we considered. And I think another one is like 4DX, the 4 disciplines of execution. It was almost a toss-up, a 50-50 of which direction we were going to go. But I would say that for my senior leadership team, letting them invest their time into investigating each one of the options out there, they gravitated basically a little bit more towards Traction, which is the book by Gino Wickman, which is the basis for EOS. And so it was an easy decision for me. If they liked it, I'm like, okay, fine, let's go with it. And then also we have a business coach, if you will, who turned into our implementer, the person that helped us to figure out, each step of the way, how to implement the EOS system for our company. But yeah, I would say a key thing for me though has been that prior to EOS, and not to go too far back in time, but our company started in 1985, so well over 30 years ago. We didn't have the kind of structure that just me personally that I crave. And
Mm-hmm.
that's really what led to this happening. Once I was named CEO, I said, okay, step one, let's really get organized. I mean, we were successful and we had a lot of things going for us, but I think a lot of the big picture ideas that we had were not getting the attention that they needed, and we weren't accomplishing these big picture things. And so for me, that was a big goal of the EOS, of implementing the EOS system.
Yeah, and we're going to spend some time kind of digging into the different aspects of it. What I've seen and what I've liked about it is, I'm a big advocate in terms of process, and I spend a lot of times on sales and business development. And I believe that you have to have a sales and business development process. You can't just go in and shoot from the hip. You got to have, figure out what you're going to do in every situation, every scenario, every step in the kind of that sales pipeline or funnel. You need to know what the process is. And this is the first time that I've seen like a comprehensive process across all aspects of the business. I've seen things like OKRs, KPIs, things like that. Those are great, which are kind of, I would call them objectives or goals or targets, but they don't necessarily give you the process to achieve them and deal with many, many other things that the EOS allows you to deal with. I'm just gonna read something from the book, and we're going to talk about the promise. But then we're going to talk about. I'm going to ask you about some of the common reasons or frustrations that small and medium sized business owners have in terms of trying to get to the next level. The promise of the EOS is you'll get great employees at all levels. You'll have a shared vision. You'll communicate with each other and solve problems, demonstrate accountability, and you'll have the ability to scale. Which, I mean, that pretty much checks, all the boxes in terms of, what a lot of companies are looking for. But the reality is a lot of small and medium-sized businesses, maybe they start off as family businesses and they get to a certain level, they start to have frustrations with different parts of the business. I mean, can you talk a little bit about some of the challenges that you had trying to scale your business?
Very much so. Certainly, I think about the different areas of business and how they interact with each other. Certainly, between finance, sales, and marketing, those two in and of themselves are, that's a huge challenge. And then also for us on the operation side of things, it's difficult for them all to work optimally without having alignment between them, and especially when it comes to the identity of the company, the brand of the company. I think we suffered for a number of years from the marketing angle of saying, "Hey, we're all things to all people. We can translate, we can interpret, we can do all the services, we can support any language in any vertical, etc." It's not a compelling marketing message. If somebody's looking for a company that's going to take care of them in their specific area of need, do they want somebody that's, if they're in banking, do they want somebody that specializes in gaming localization? Probably
Mm-hmm.
not. I mean, these are two very different areas of business. And so I think for me, having that alignment and that vision, because it really, really starts with that from an EOS standpoint, is you have to have that vision up front, and then everything can fit in below that in alignment. And it was a really, really valuable process for me going through the discussions, communications that we had as far as saying, okay, Rick, we understand your vision. Now, what does each part of the team, each person, each process, how does it align with what that vision, that stated vision is?
It's interesting. You started off with vision because in the book, he mentions 6 key components of a successful business. And that's vision, people, data, dealing with issues, having a process, and then gaining traction. And we're going to hopefully touch on all those. But let's stay with vision, because I've been in some very painful meetings in several organizations where they're like, "Hey, we have to have a mission statement. We need to develop a vision." And you try to do it by committee, with 30 people in a room or more, enterprise wide. And it just turns into this
Yeah. How does
like,
that work?
yeah. And some people just like throw in the towel and say this is a waste of time because they're jaded. Some people are really into it, but they have conflicting kind of ideas. How did
Yeah.
you, because, your company, as you said, I think you said you started in 1985. You've been
Yeah.
around for a while. How did you say
Wow.
to your team, what's our vision without you being the CEO saying, here's our vision? I mean, how did you deal with
Yeah.
that?
Yeah, no, it's tough. I mean, to a certain extent, it was a collaborative process, but then also it was kind of top down in certain ways. I will say it was during a big period of change for us. For many years prior to that, I had a business partner. And in my case, we're a family owned business. It was my sister that was my business partner. And it was a tug of war in many ways. Toward like I always wanted us to have more structure and to have a business management system. She didn't feel the same way. There are probably many reasons for it, but when you're 50-50 partners and one says no to something, well, it's not going to happen, unless you can come to some sort of agreement. So when ultimately we got to that point in the history of the business where I was the CEO, I was able to say, guys, I have a different idea for how this business can run. I have thoughts on how we can collectively be successful together by working in alignment with each other. And it starts with a centralized vision. And so what I threw out initially was, and to be fair, we did already have stated vision and mission statements.
Mhm.
We just had to tweak those a little bit to address kind of the current business environment and what we wanted to do with the company. And so, no, it wasn't an entirely top down thing. It was a little bit collaborative, but certainly not across the whole company. It was really a kind of a smaller group thing that we did with our coach. And we just decided, okay, this is what the vision is.
It makes a lot of sense. It's funny, you talked on the situation with your partner, your sister in the past, and in the book he talks about it, and I bring it up about that he talks about in the book because I've seen it in real life as well. That a lot of people don't want to let go of the vine. That means they're up to a certain point and they can see that there may be better ways to do things, but they don't want to let go of what they've been doing in the past, right? And it's so hard because you built up a business and you're like, well, we've always done it this way, and look, we've achieved this level of success. Why would we change? And so how do you deal with that kind of conversation?
It's funny you bring it up that way because I mean, literally, that was the conversation over. Like, wait a second. Why do we need to do all this extra work to get ourselves "quote unquote" organized when we're already successful and things are working really well? Why reinvent the wheel? So yeah, that was a challenge. Honestly, it was a big challenge to say, okay, and I'll put it from a mindset standpoint. It is the lifestyle business versus a business that is a thriving, growing business that is scalable. And I really wanted the latter. I wanted our company, Dynamic Language, to be the latter style of business, and not just. And I shouldn't say just. I mean, there are many things about a lifestyle business that are super valuable and positive. And I respect anybody that has any kind of successful business. But it does come down to ambition level. What do you want to do? And for me, I think to attract the top talent, retain the top talent, there has to be some level of motivation when it comes to the growth of the business and incentivizing people and their desire to help the business grow. Uh, it has to align with their compensation. It has to align with the potential for growth within their position, as well as the growth of the company, of course. And so for me, that was a big factor in saying, like, let's make this a growth based business. It doesn't have to be 30% per year or anything like that, but let's get beyond this level where we are right now and have systems and processes and people that are able to drive it forward and create some opportunities. And that was the other thing I was going to mention is there was a flatness in the organization related to job positions and things like that. And so through this, I think we have found that it's been beneficial to create more tiers, to have opportunities for personal growth, to go beyond, um, you know, let's say project manager. Like there are different roles within our team now and an ability to get to a senior PM role. And I'm also candid with people like, hey, you may not work here forever. And I mean, it's rare that anyone does. We've got a number of employees that are 20 plus year employees,
Wow.
10 plus year employees. And I really honor and appreciate that. But at the same time, I understand based on a person's personal ambitions, they might want a 2-year position and then the ability to either start their own thing or jump ship and go to another company where there is greater growth potential. And so I honor that. And I'm like, okay, just give me the 2 best years you can. You're going to learn a lot here. Hopefully you're going to work your tail off and we're both going to benefit and it's a win-win. So I understand not everybody can be a 20-year employee.
No. And so what I'm hearing you say is basically, if you're not growing, you're just kind of static and possibly even going backwards eventually, right? So you want to create,
That's the fear.
You want to create growth so that you can be a more viable business, but also you can attract people to your business, because if you're not growing, what kind of people are you going to attract, if anybody? But in order to grow, you need to have some kind of processes in place that will allow you to scale. Because, if you're printing out checks and paying all your bills the old way with paper checks, that might be the way that I know companies that do that still, but it might be the way that you've always done it. But there are better, more efficient ways to do things, right? And so,
so much.
Before we jump to the people thing, I want to go just stay on the vision part for a second, because he brought up in his book a couple, I thought unique ways to help devise or develop a vision statement. Was list 3 people who, if you could clone them, would lead to market domination, and then list the characteristics of those people or what they embody. And I thought that was a pretty cool way to come up with, what your vision is, or what kind of qualities that you want to develop in your organization.
Yeah, that's one thing that I think Wickman does a great job of, is being practical. It's not just about storytelling. In some books, really gonna kind of go too far down that path about, when I was 7 years old, and then take a whole chapter just talking about a paper route. No, this book contains a huge amount of direction and tools, practical tools that you can apply to get to the end goal of, again, in this case, creating a vision. And I think that whole concept of being helpful, clarifying that vision, ensuring that everyone is working towards the same goals. I mean, that's what every book that talks about vision wants to do. I think the way that he talks about it and the actual exercises and tools that he shares that you can go through to make it happen really resonated with me. And it's just one aspect of the book, but I think it's just a philosophy that they apply throughout. I mean, you talk about all the different components, and obviously we're going to get to a bunch of them. It's a roadmap. It really is. And if you follow it, you're going to have your own version of a system that should be able to help and drive you forward.
Yeah. Again, he doesn't just say, okay, here's a methodology, now go run with it. He actually has every single thing, like how to deal with issues. So there's only like 12 different kinds of issues, and here's how you deal with these different types of issues. And I'm like, wow. But before we get to those, let's talk about people, because he talks about, getting the right people in the right seats. Why don't you talk a little bit about your experience in terms of getting the right people, getting them in the right seats, but also using your vision to attract or filter candidates that you're looking to hire?
Yeah, definitely. I'll address the last part first, because I think it's so important to be able to speak to candidates or potential talent that you're talking to a little bit about the history of the company, but your trajectory. Like, okay, this is where we were. These are some of the challenges that we faced, and we grew this much over this period of time. And this is what I'm seeing for the future. And really giving them that inspiration, that, for helping them to see the potential of the seat on the bus that they can take to help drive that growth. Because it has to align with vision. And for us, we're a firm that I will say a long time ago, we established core values, right? So there are like 6 core values that for us are our identity, right? And it's that for me has been a process of helping and reinstilling on a regular basis. Hey guys, this is what we're about. And for us, like responsiveness is kind of the top one, but being timely in our communications, but not at the expense of quality, etc. I mean, there's a lot more to it than that, and we're not going to go down that road. But I will just say these core values have been intrinsic in our recruitment efforts and identifying talent and making sure that it's a fit between the people that we're trying to bring on board, or that we're trying to filter through to be able to bring on board. They've got those core values that we have. They're not changing. We really need those people to understand them and ultimately to embrace them. And there are specific questions that we ask through the interview process that help to kind of filter out the ones that just it's not a fit. Yeah, I could give you some ridiculous examples, but we got a lot of ground to cover.
Well, but just having that vision there as a reference, because sometimes you're like, yeah, I like this person. They might be a good fit. But if you go back and you look and say, what are the kind of culture that we're trying to build, do they tick all the boxes of that? And you're like, oh, because I recently had a situation. I mean, when I read the book, I was like, okay, we're just getting started as a startup. We've got me, our CRO, our CTO, and our dev team. And do we really need a vision? And I was like, you know what? I think we kind of do. And our vision has to do with, seeking low-cost, elegant solutions to complex problems, to communicating openly, honestly, transparently, and if you don't know something, just saying you don't know and asking like, hey, just kind of creating that culture. And it's funny because I was interviewing a couple candidates, and I started to go down the road with one, and then I reflected upon, even though we haven't formally made that up, it was like, you know what, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. So it's, because it's just like, that's not the direction that person is going to move in. And so I think it's good to have that kind of touchstone there, to just kind of to reference. Back to you, like you have a relatively mature team, and you're bringing new people in. Did you ever find that, this is the right person, but they're in the wrong seat? Did you ever come across situations like that?
Almost definitely. And I think one of the key things that I did was being able to take somebody that had proven himself, in this case, he had proven himself to be super valuable in every role that he had played. And it was the right move in my mind to give him an opportunity to take another step up when I became CEO. And so, he is my right hand. He and I collaborate on just about every important decision that has to happen for the company. Well, and of course, we include other people that are relevant in the moment. But he's my director of operations. And I mean, he started as a desktop publisher. But to talk about somebody that has applied themselves and learned and really, really has embraced the core values, like why wouldn't I, really, reward that in some ways, but also challenge him to say, okay, what is your ambition level? Do you want to do more? Can you do more? Because that's one thing that Wickman talks about in the book, and that's capacity. If somebody doesn't, what did he say? It's like got it,
want it, and capacity to do it.
Capacity to do it. That's exactly what it is. And that's the question we have to ask over and over again. Does this person have it? Do they want it? Do they have the capacity to do it? And that's easier to answer, I think, from an internal standpoint, because the people. And so, you can try from the outside, but of course not. It's difficult to look at somebody from outside your organization and to really know, outside of the resume and the interview, what is their capacity? They say they're able to do something. And I'll tell you, we've had some misses. We've had some painful
and the
misses,
rest of the world. I mean, hiring is probably the most challenging part of growing a business.
Yeah, I would not disagree with that. But when something is a hit, when it works, it's so great, because it's one less thing that you need to worry about when you're giving a person an area of responsibility. And of course, I'm mostly talking about people that are in leadership positions. When you do find somebody that can take ownership of their area of the business, oh my goodness. I mean, it's completely, business changing, and it's so, beneficial. Yeah. Cause then you've got a pillar that you can build off of.
Well, that accountability piece kind of pops up all throughout the traction book. It's just helping to join accountability, individual accountability, and kind of enforcing that. And I don't know if you've ever been in an organization where people make commitments, but then they let it slide. And it's demoralizing to everybody, and you don't get any traction. You don't move forward because
Well, can I mention one thing related to that?
Sure.
Because I think it's so important. Like there are many business analogies that we've heard thousands of times, right? And the people on the bus analogy, right? So in this scenario, hypothetically, I'm the CEO, and I've got a lot of people on the bus, getting them in the right seats. Of course, that's part of it, and making sure that they're that the requirements of them align with what they're capable of doing. But I heard a really interesting twist on that analogy. There's a speaker, this is a couple of years ago at the ALC conference in Las Vegas. I think her name's Michelle Hecken. She's a former language company owner. I think she was a linguist at first, but she said, think about making your organization a series of buses, right? And each area of the organization is its own bus. And so the person leading my sales organization, they're their own little mini CEO, and empowering them to make the decisions they need to make that bus operate the way it needs to support the rest of the team. But then also, of course, the accountability part that you talk about. And, for her, she was able to create an organization that she was like, I'm going to step back and let this thing run. And she sold it and did quite well. And as I understand it, she's quite happy. So I think that's pretty good blueprint, but it is so much about having the right people in the right seats. But yeah, I think you were going towards the accountability thing, which for me is paramount.
Totally. And I think people, in my experience, the right people thrive on autonomy and accountability, and they want to be held accountable, and they want other people, their colleagues, to be held accountable. But before I go too far down on that, because you mentioned your right-hand person in the company, and there, I think you said it was head of operations. So in the book, he talks about every company needs an entrepreneur and an integrator. And you don't want to have an entrepreneur running around going like, hey, I got an idea. Hey, I got an idea. I got an idea. And because you need somebody.
Okay.
So, and
it's kind of hitting deep right now.
Well, no, but when I read that, I was like, but I think I can do both. But, what are your thoughts? And did you guys look at each other when you came to that part of the program?
It was crystal clear from the beginning of the program which role belonged to whom. Right?
Okay.
I mean, for sure, the visionary part of things was me all the way. For him, he is just built to be the integrator person. He runs our, as EOS dialogue calls it, the L10 meeting. So we have a weekly meeting that is, gospel for us. I think our team in general, everybody attends well over 90% of the meetings throughout the year. But he helped to build it. He runs it. And it was, very crystal clear based on mindset, based on skill set, experience, and everything that the vision role is going to be mine. The integrator role is going to be his. So that was, it's been a good fit, I'll say.
That's awesome. Okay. So we've talked about vision and people. The other four areas are data, issues, process, and traction. Let's get into data, because I've been in some organizations where they want to collect all kinds of data from everybody. And that can be painful and demoralizing too, because people want to see, how is this? What's the benefit of this? Why do you need this? Right? Especially, I'll talk about salespeople. When you have a CRM and you have management that they want all kinds of data entered, you're like, okay, I'm supposed to be out selling, but you want me to be behind the computer entering data, right? And you need to find a happy balance there. In terms of the data or the scorecard, why don't you describe the best practice and what you've adopted?
Yeah, that for me is so the foundation of what we do every week and why it drives us forward. The scorecard, basically, we figured out the key performance indicators, the various line items for each team. So marketing has its own set of stats, and I think we probably keep about, 8 stats for marketing. Sales, we've got 2 separate sections for sales. They've got their own stats related to their pipeline, what closed in the last week. What they're on track for. Like it's the numbers that matter, the numbers that tell us whether we're being successful or not. And I just wrote about this on LinkedIn, actually. And I think it's really important for me that the numbers where it makes sense to have goals, to set goals and make it a collaborative process, right? You can't just do this as a one-off. And for us, we actually had a team retreat for our senior leadership team, where we did this together as a big group.
Mm-hmm.
And it got built from top down, right? We decided, okay, we know revenue wise what we did in 2022 and 2023 was almost done. This was in November of 23. We knew what we were on track for. And I was really, really proud and happy that we hit our goal for 23. And so we set a goal for 2024, and we use that number to define the KPI that were needed to support that goal, right? From a sales standpoint, from a marketing standpoint, from an operational standpoint. And, you don't have control over all of them, of course, but the numbers that you do have control over, you do what you have to do to meet the goals. So again, I will say not every number that we track has a goal, and not every goal is static. Sometimes we say, okay, well, we need to adjust that down, like our time to our hold time for our interpreting scheduling team. Like they were knocking it out of the park over and over again. Like they were we set a goal of, I don't know, whatever the number was, and they were beating it handily every week. So we're like, let's challenge ourselves to have a higher goal or a better goal.
Yeah.
And we do that on a regular basis. And some goals, we've found, like, hey, if you're in the red every single week, for one thing, it leads to conversations.
Sure.
And it's like, okay, did we set the goal in the wrong place? Why are we not hitting it? Are we not capable of hitting it? Do we need to change things from a process standpoint, a people standpoint, et cetera? That's one of my favorite things about this, is that things that are issues lead to conversations. Conversations lead to action. And hopefully you take the right action, you pull the right lever, and something changes for the better. But of course, in business, there are so many variables. You never know when somebody is going to leave their position. That can affect your numbers drastically, et cetera. But having that weekly cadence of reviewing the numbers that matter across the company, make sure that everyone is accountable for their area of the business, and it's not just between them and their supervisor, it's across the whole team. And so, yeah, the scorecard, I think, is super, super important. But of course, beyond that, you've got your weekly to-dos, as they call it, rocks,
Mm-hmm.
in the analogy that they go into. We review those every week, and nobody wants to be the person that has a to-do that took more than a week, or the rock that never gets any progress on it. So I think that for me has been one of the best things about this system, is that we do have some big picture items that we're trying to accomplish. They don't get accomplished unless you pay attention to them. And so, yeah, from a stats, from a data standpoint, we're very committed to it. And but you did bring up a really good point when you're talking about the sales example, and that is finding that balance of investing time into tracking important data versus doing the job, right? And so we do try to pick data points that are not that difficult to collect.
Yeah.
Sometimes some of them are a little bit challenging, and honestly, in some cases, we've changed software because we're not happy about the reporting component and what it can do from a data standpoint. But it's something that we're committed to, and I don't see that changing anytime soon.
Yeah, I mean, I think in his book, he talks about the importance of a scorecard, that you want to have things in there that are forward-looking indicators, right? Like, for example, the P&L, that's going to tell you how you did, but
Right.
The number of new prospects in your pipeline is going to tell you how you're going to be doing, right? Things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he advises something like 5 to 15 items in a scorecard. It sounds like you have scorecards for each team. Is that right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
Cool. And then the other thing you brought up is, like, it allows you sometimes to identify issues. And then he's got a solution for everything. I think was it identify, discuss, and solve, right?
Yeah. Exactly.
And then he breaks it down into, basically, there are issues that are they're just business problems. Okay, this is a problem we weren't expecting. Okay, and then there are issues that are related to communicating something to the team and getting people to agree. And then there's brainstorming ideas. Do we go or no go on this new idea? But those three different types. Tell me about how because you're the CEO. And a lot of times in companies, you go into the meeting and somebody say, we have this problem. And then everybody looks at the CEO and says, well, what should we do? So how do you, kind of, what's your
Yeah.
approach?
Yeah. I mean, I'm certainly not the person that just has all the answers. I mean, it just can't work that way. It doesn't work that way. And I don't like it, when it comes down to that. So I think no matter what, the person that knows the most about the situation, step one is, okay, give me your perspective. Tell me what we need to know as a group, and what do you think the right solution is, right? Have them propose the first solution, because it's the monkey on your back analogy, right? Okay. So they've got this monkey on their back and they just want to put it on yours. It's like,
Right.
well, okay, no, let's together figure out how to deal with this monkey. And so, yeah, I think for us, a lot of our challenges are business issues and challenges that come up through the week. If they're not immediately time sensitive, what we'll do is we'll push them to our meeting, which happens every Thursday. And it gets added to the issues list and we talk through it. And again, it's something where, okay, if it's Jennifer's department, and it's a challenge and maybe it involves other departments, we kind of talk through, what's going on, why we think it's going on. And then it's a brainstorm on how to solve it. And then once, and if I feel like there's like maybe a couple of different directions that are being thrown out there and they both have merit, I will weigh in, of course, and I think it is important, but I also want to make sure that it's not just a top down decision in every case. I mean, for the most part, I think the best business decisions that we make are collaborative. I think it works better that way for us.
Makes a lot of sense. Let me ask you this. In his book, he talks about, quarterly goals, yearly goals, 3-year goals, and then 10-year goals. 10-year goals for me, that's like, I don't even know. It's like,
My brain can't operate that way.
I
It's
mean,
too far, man.
but did you go through that? I mean, because he's saying like, where do you want to be in 10 years?
We
And then like
did.
reverse engineer it back to where you are now. But
Yeah.
so, like, where did you draw the line? I mean, did you go to 10 or did you go to 3 or 1 or like, how'd you
All
do
right. You're making me feel a little guilty right now, because
that?
yes, we
That's
did
my
go
job.
through that exercise. Yes, we did look at those numbers, but our long-term goals, honestly, we have not, I need to revisit those and just make sure and see where we are, whether we're on track with that, on those or not. I'm really curious. I know that we set a super ambitious, and to be fair, it wasn't me. It was my sales leader and my operations leader. They're like, you know what, in 10 years, we want to be, and it was like triple what our revenue was at that moment. And I'm like, okay, I like the idea, but how are we going to get there?
Just buy a
And
big
truly,
company.
again, yeah, maybe that's the way to do it. Yeah, just take a massive loan and buy a big company. I don't know. But we did go through the exercise. We totally did, and kind of figured out where we want to be in 1, 3, et cetera. And I will say we're trending ahead of what we originally thought of for our 3-year goal. And hey, obviously credit to the system, but big time credit to the people that wanted the inspiration. They saw the brass ring and wanted to go grab it. And yeah, that's it makes me super happy and super proud when we do hit any goals. Now, if we can hit our goal this year again, these are the same people. They were super ambitious about our goal this year. I'm really hopeful we get it, and they know that, hey, the productivity bonuses, the company success bonus, if you almost get to your goal, no, that's not getting paid out. Like, we have to exceed the goal
Mm.
for the bonuses to happen, and they know it, and they're like, yeah, we are on board. We want this to be a big goal. So, yeah, I'm hopeful that they're right.
Awesome. Well, I'm just going to ask you about one more thing, and then I want to go back to your direct experience learning and implementing the EOS. But he talks about process, and you should have a three-step process for everything, and then you should document it. A lot of companies aren't good at documenting, especially when you're that small, medium size, kind of
Yeah.
legacy. We have this legacy system, and that our accountant has always been our accountant, and she knows what the process is, and and our
Oof.
marketing people, they know what the processes are, but there's no documentation.
Mm.
And if that key person leaves or something happens, or you want to change something,
Mhm.
so have you been disciplined, and can you maybe even give an example of where you went and looked at the process, changed it, and then documented it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a massive thing for us. And, credit to again, to my director of operations on this one. We have kind of, two-part area for our process and our training for documenting processes and in multiple ways. Basically, that's what I'm trying to get at. We're a Microsoft shop, so SharePoint is our intranet, and we utilize that to, I think, great effect. I really, it's amazing the tools that are out there that are part of that suite. And by no means are we maximizing what it's capable of. But I will say that using Teams to create video training
Mhm.
has been really, really helpful. And it's pretty darn easy. Like if something becomes out of date because you're utilizing new software or you've modified the process, just, hey, carve out time in your schedule to make a 30-minute video and record it, stash it, with your team's training area. Boom, you're done. I think not everybody learns the same way though. And as practical and helpful as I think video training is, written documentation is critical too. I would certainly say when it comes to accounting and finance, having like written documentation on all the different things that come up in receivables and payables and tax reporting and all this stuff. I think that's huge. We also really use lists quite a bit. And I'm reminded of that because of accounting and finance and making sure that we on a regular basis take care of the things that need to be done, like paying taxes and for all the different states that we have employees and then all the municipalities where we do work, etc. It's kind of a bear, but you can get a hold of that bear by creating this structure that helps you attack it. And of course, you always have to keep in mind that, and this is of analogies, is one of the uglier ones. What if somebody was hit by a bus? And there's probably a nicer way to say that. But in reality, if a person is suddenly unavailable to perform their duties,
Mhm.
how difficult is it going to be to have someone else step in and take over, right? And believe me, I know all about that in the sense that there was a time of great turmoil for us during COVID, and we had to just completely shift a lot of what we were doing and have people step into roles that they weren't familiar with. And it was a real challenge. And that was pretty good motivation to say, this hadn't been documented well enough ahead of time. Let's do something about that. And so it's something that we do try to do now. Certainly, anytime there's a software change, you got to create new documentation and training info. Are we as up to speed as I want us to be? Not 100%, but I still feel pretty good that if I'm not going to say the bus thing, if an issue came up, that we wouldn't really experience too much. And I'll also mention that as an ISO firm, I can't say that we're ISO certified, but I can say our quality management system is certified. We do the ISO 9001 standard, 17100, and then also 27001, which is the information security management standard. That has absolutely taught us how important it is to
Document.
have documented
Yeah.
processes, and that it just goes part and parcel with making sure that everything is documented, up to date, audited, and considered valid.
Awesome. Okay, now let's go back to before EOS, and you're looking around and you're thinking, okay, things are going okay, but if we want to get to the next level, we probably need to bring a little bit of structure to this. And you're looking around and you're like, well, this looks pretty good, but how much time and resources is this going to take? And so you have to sell yourself on it, or in your leadership team, but then you also have to you got to make that commitment in terms of resources and time. But then you also have to get the team on board with it, because a lot of people have been through, all of us, I think, have been through kind of initiatives, right? Oh, we're going to do this and we're going to do that. And a lot of times they fail.
Yeah.
You get people who just don't want to get on the bus. They just don't want to see change, right? So why
Right.
don't you talk a little bit about, your decision process in terms of choosing this program and then, making the commitment? Because it's a commitment of money and time, right? And
Yeah.
people need to be doing their jobs, right? I mean, every time I do something, I'm like, oh, I got to be doing that. And it's like, you have to figure out, you got to prioritize.
Mhm.
So how did you make that decision? How did you sell yourself on it, your leadership team? And then how did you convince the rest of your team that, hey guys, we're doing this?
Yeah. Oh, great question. I think by default, humans and certainly workers in particular are resistant to change. I think people like what they know. They get comfortable. And this isn't everybody. It's a very much a generalization, but I think it holds pretty true based on my 30 plus years in business. If somebody can earn a good living, taking widget A, doing whatever they need to with it and producing something like that's fine. Change is difficult. Not everybody's up for it. But I think, yes, if you can paint a picture as to what the future can look like, and the benefits of implementing that change, then it gets them a little bit more on board. But I think one of the big hurdles, of course, is the perception that, okay, wait a second, if we're going to start this whole business management system thing, that sounds like more work to me. That sounds like, in addition to what I'm already doing, I have to do more stuff. No, thank you. And there are absolutely a percentage of people in an organization that felt that way. They're like, they weren't excited about it. But at the same time, once the internal decision for me, just the mental decision to say, you know what, I finally get a chance to get us more organized, to give us more structure. I know that there are benefits there. I personally know X number of people, and I probably knew like 4, maybe 5 people personally that had implemented EOS to great success. I'm like, okay, guys, there's light at the end of the tunnel, and there's going to be a lot of things. And so I think this is one example of where some sort of track record that you can point to and say, guys, if we just start keeping an eye on these statistics, they're going to get attention. Stats are going to improve. Things are going to get better. I think, there were definitely some people that found their way out of the organization where they're like, you know what, this isn't what I signed up for. I'm not excited about it. I like the way things used to be, whatever. I would say that was a process that took a couple of years, where we had some turnover. We were basically able to say, all right, well, we're bringing in new people that have a really fresh view of what the company is and can look like and what the future can look like. And so from that standpoint, it has really become kind of a cohesive team where, in spite of the fact that we have some 20 plus year employees, they're the ones that were able to embrace change and were able to take that prior knowledge and to apply it going forward in a positive way and to be a good influence. I hope anyway. I hope they weren't like, saying poisonous things in the background as things were, progressing towards the EOS journey. But I really don't think they were. Truly, it has been a journey. But I really feel like we're finally at a point of more stability when it comes to our people and processes and technology. I mean, those 3 pillars of what we do, the ones that like the lack of change, the ones that like, just doing what's normal, they're kind of at that position right now. We're not implementing a lot of change at this point. So the people that like comfort, I think, are getting to be in that position.
Yeah, it's interesting. I do agree that the majority of people seem to be change resistant, even though a lot of times, I'm involved with an organization that tried to adopt OKRs, for example, and many people were resistant. And I looked at it as like, what's the problem? I mean, because really what's happening here is you're getting a whole lot of clarity in terms of what's expected of you and how you can contribute to the overall mission of the organization. We're just stripping away all the ambiguity here in terms of what you need to do. And maybe some people are afraid of that because they don't want that accountability piece. But if they don't want the accountability piece, then I would argue that probably they're not the right people on the bus.
I would totally agree with you.
Yeah.
Yep.
So if you want to give some advice to other business leaders like yourself, medium-sized enterprise, I think in his book, and I actually listened to a podcast with Gino Wickman, and he's like, I work with companies from 1 person up to 251, and if they've got more than that, I'm not going to work with them. That said, he did admit that his system is used, and that he has worked with companies that do a couple $1 billion a year in revenue. So, but he said his real target is on the small medium sized businesses, companies up to about 50 employees, and so on. But if you're talking to a leader in that kind of area there, and they're struggling, what advice would you give them in terms of when is the right time, or when is it appropriate to look at a solution like the EOS?
Well, I think you've made an incredibly good decision by looking at it prior to the start of the company. Honestly,
Right.
going into everything, like, with the ability to have that vision part pretty much done and have that drive everything else that you're trying to decide on as far as establishing, everything as far as the health of the business. But, what do they say? The best time to make a positive change is, yesterday, but
Right.
yesterday's gone. So the next best time is now.
Right.
I think truly the benefits of having structure, of investing your thought and your time into figuring out how to make whatever is good about your company better and to make it scalable, it's worth it. It's worth the time to do all those things. Whether or not you want, like we talked about earlier, a lifestyle type business versus a growth type business. Of course, it depends on what kind of exit you want, what your long-term personal goals and strategy are, your stakeholders, what do they want? I don't think there's anybody in that world of stakeholders with any companies that is anti structure and organization and growth. I mean, those three, they kind of fit together, right?
Sure.
Is there pain along the way? Quite often, yes, because there's the unknown, and sometimes best laid plans go by the board, but you drive forward and you find different solutions, and that's kind of like the fun part of business in some cases, like painful, yes, but when you find a solution to something that was challenging, it's super rewarding at the same time. So yeah, I do think it comes down to who are the stakeholders, and if they are on board with the challenge of organizing your business in a way like EOS or some of the other systems out there, then I think it's all, full steam ahead. It's absolutely, all positive. But yeah, it's about embracing that challenge.
Awesome. Hey, last question. You mentioned that you have a business coach, and I think that you said that he's like EOS certified, or at least he's familiar with the program. How does that work? How often does your coach come in and meet with you or the team? And just explain that process.
Yeah, no, totally. So yeah, he is. He's somebody that I've known for more than 10 years, and he has been a business consultant and coach that whole time, but I haven't worked with him that whole time. I really only started working with him when we decided to go down the route of EOS. And fortunately for me, he had helped two other companies prior to us. And basically EOS aligned with a lot of his philosophies anyway. So he's like, all right, let me just kind of absorb all this, and then I can help you go through the process. And it was, he was able to handhold myself and each person on the team through what it takes to make the system happen and to get it going. And so from a cadence standpoint, he attends almost every single one of our L10 meetings on Thursdays. And then he has one-on-one time with certain members of our senior leadership team. It's, in most cases, it's kind of one-on-two. It's both him and myself and the person, but it's their meeting. It's their agenda. And we get to just kind of talk and brainstorm and figure things out. But he's been invaluable, and for sure, I would say this whole process would have been a lot longer and more painful without his guidance, for sure.
Awesome. Well, hey, Rick, I know from talking with you personally that you've had it's a really positive experience going through this and adopting the EOS. And I want to say thank you for coming on the Grow Fast podcast and talking about your experience. We're going to get this out there because our target audience also is small, medium-sized business owners and, chief revenue officers and so on. I think there's a lot of valuable information here. So thank you so much.
Oh, hey, pleasure to be here. Obviously super happy for you and proud for you, the new venture and this podcast. And it's been an honor to be with you on this. So yeah, anytime you need me for anything in the future, just say the word.
I will. Thanks, Rick. Take care. Cheers.
All right. Thanks, man.